Hi, welcome to this week's Torah. In this week's Parsha, we read about how Moshe Rabbeinu was sent to Pharaoh to tell him to let the Jewish people go. And this is Moshe Rabbeinu's first encounter with Pharaoh, and it doesn't exactly go the way he hopes. Moshe Rabbeinu comes in, he tells Pharaoh that God has sent him, and he says, you need to send the Jewish people out. And far from listening to Moshe Rabbeinu, Pharaoh says, Mi Hashem asher eshma b'kolo? Who is God that I should listen to him? I'm not sending out the Jewish people. Not only that, I'm not even not going to send out the Jewish people. I'm going to make it worse. Tichbad ha'avoda. Let things get even more difficult and even harder on the Jewish people. Val yishu v'divrei shov. They shouldn't look at things that are wrong. They shouldn't listen to lies that they're going to be able to get out of this country. This is where they're at. And this is where they're staying. And Moshe Rabbeinu comes out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, why did you send me? At least I shouldn't have made it any worse, but I went in and I made it worse for my brethren. You didn't save the Jewish people. How could you do something like that to me? And Rav Shamshon Hirsch says a very important comment over there. Why is it actually that Moshe Rabbeinu failed in this instance? And he says a very important lesson here. That Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people needed to be taught that it was not through diplomacy that this was going to be solved. It was not something where Moshe Rabbeinu could come inside and strike a deal with Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, yeah, you know what, this sounds right, it sounds okay, I should really emancipate the Jewish people and let them leave, you can go. That's not going to happen. And when he went inside and he tried the diplomatic route, things only got worse. And once Moshe Rabbeinu saw that in a natural way it wasn't going to happen and it wasn't going to change, and he says, Hashem, what am I supposed to do? Hashem says, now you know it won't work through you. Now I'm going to come in and change things. Now, with my help, you'll see everything will change around. And I think there's an important lesson for us as well within this. You know, there are countries now that are rolling out the vaccine in a great way. Israel, even our country here in the UK, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have reached the vaccine. And we're heralding it as a triumph of science over nature. But if we herald it as a triumph of science over nature and don't realize the hand of God that is part of this entire story, sometimes things start to go against us. So we think we're going to start now with the vaccinations, give it a few months, everybody's going to be better, everything's going to be good. And suddenly you get another strain. Suddenly things get worse, not better, and everybody thinks, how could it get worse? It's supposed to be getting better. But that's the point. Start to realize it is not science that has somehow beaten out nature. God has allowed the scientists to find a way to end this. And if we see it as the hand of God rather than seeing it as the hand of science, maybe we won't have to get another and then another pushback. Another way of being sort of drawn back into the same thing and saying, we thought we'd had it figured out. And God goes, you don't have it figured out. You think you can come up with something? I'll come up with something more complicated. You'll come up with something more complicated? I can make it even more complicated. Realize and recognize that this virus is not nature. It is I who have sent it. And when you realize and recognize that it comes from me, and you turn to me for the help, then hopefully nature will be subservient. Science will work together with this idea. And hopefully we will realize it's not up to us to beat out nature. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem will give us the power to beat out nature through the means of science. But if we attribute it correctly and realize it's not up to us to win, we need to know who really is in charge, hopefully then we'll be much more successful. And I hope that even though we now are in a greater form of lockdown in more places, here in the UK, in Israel, and many other places, that these lockdowns should end soon. This science should be able together, coupled with the koyach of Hashem, with the power of Hashem, to help us get out of this terrible situation. And we should have the ability, and we should have the tremendous zechus, the merit, to come out of this on the other side, going back to being able to live our lives normally and appreciating the goodness that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us. Wishing you all a very good Shabbos. Thank you for joining me.